Good Boy is about a very good dog named Indy, who's been with his owner Todd since he was a pup. Todd seems to be suffering from some cancerous disease that's causing him to cough up blood, and he's very ill, so he decides to leave the city and move into his old grandfather's house into the woods. His grandfather died in this home, but he left Todd the whole foundation, so Todd decides, he's going to spend the rest of his remaining days living in this home. Todd also has a sister, Vera, in this movie who checks on him occasionally to make sure he's okay. Now, as soon as Todd and Indy move into the house, things start to get a little weird. Now, this movie was directed by Ben Leonberg and is brought to you by Shudder, which I haven't been too keen on the Shudder app like that. I know there's a lot of people out there that's probably hip to Shudder and they've probably been watching Shudder for a long time, but I haven't really been on to Shudder like that. But this movie is definitely trying to bring more awareness to Shudder and the kind of quality movies that they do offer. Now, I gotta say, I really did enjoy this movie, but there's a few critiques that I do have that I felt like they could have did a little better, and I'm gonna talk about that in a minute. But basically, as soon as Todd and Indy move into their grandfather's old house, like I said, things start to get a little creepy. They start to get a little weird. Slow buildups of things starting to move, and you see shadows, and the dog is practically sensing that there's something wrong here. This movie is heavily driven on the term man's best friend, and it's really highlighting how a dog can be the best companion when it comes to having a bond with their owner. While they're in the house, Todd is sick, he's getting worse, he's not getting any better, but through the whole time something is going on with him, Indy is sensing that there's something wrong in the house. It's like the house is haunted or something. But it's crazy how the director decided to shoot this movie. I feel like it was interesting how they did the camera angles, how they had the dog. It was almost like you would see the dog's point of view for everything. You never really saw Todd's face throughout the entire movie until towards the end, which I'm not going to spoil it for you guys. You never saw his sister's face either. It was always just like a shadow, blurry effect, and they would kind of like botch out their face, but it was interesting how they shot it, and it was clever, I would say. It made the movie a lot more suspenseful. Now, the movie doesn't really tell you, but you can basically see that whatever's happening to Todd is getting worse, and it was the same thing that was happening to his grandfather. He was getting worse in the house, Todd is getting worse in the house. He was coughing up blood, Todd is coughing up blood. And it's like the house is just making you sicker as you stay there. I guess it's one of those situations where you don't know that the house is making you more ill than you already are, so you don't decide that you should leave. But the whole time, Indy, the dog, she's knowing that something is definitely wrong, and Todd is just not getting any better. I felt bad for the dog, because the dog loves Todd. He's been with Todd since he was a puppy. You could hear the little wincing and whining and crying every time Todd leave the house. Indy would just stay in one spot and wait for him to come throughout the whole day. He wouldn't leave. He would just wait for Todd to come back in the house. And, that's really touching to see how close the dog was to his owner. So they literally made the dog the protagonist in this movie. This is not an AI dog. This is a real dog acting out these scenes. And there's scenes where they actually gave Indy dreams, and you're having a front row seat to what the dog is actually dreaming about. Which I thought was also an interesting touch of how they did that. I mean, if a dog was to have a dream, what would the dog dream about? Especially while being in a haunted house that, you could clearly see he's uneasy about. Now, once the entity shows up that's haunting Indy and Todd, you get to see like a shadowy figure, it's covered in mud and guck, and you don't really know what it is. You just know that it's not from this world. I guess the only thing I really wish this movie would have done more is I wish they would have kind of explained exactly what it was that was haunting them. Where did it come from? How did it get in the grandfather's house? Like, did the grandfather play around with something that he wasn't supposed to, and all of a sudden now his house is haunted? The grandfather's been living in this house this whole time, and then one day he just starts getting sick, and then, an entity just appears in his house. I mean, I wish they would have kind of touched more on that and explained how it got there. Did he play with something he wasn't supposed to? Did something happen? They didn't really touch on what made this house become haunted. It just was what it was, and things just started happening. But the movie is clearly taking risks by having the dog as the main protagonist in the movie, and the dog is really the star here. Seeing Indy in action in this movie, it makes you really understand why it's so important to have a dog in a house, especially when you live by yourself. When Todd goes into his little comas and when things start happening to him, Indy's running out the house, he's finding little escape routes, he's jumping out of windows, he's breaking through, the doors, all types of stuff just to get out the house so he can run run and find help to come help Todd, you know, and it shows how smart these dogs actually are. Actually, a lot of these scenes that Indy was doing made me feel like the dog was smarter than a lot of humans that wouldn't even think about doing certain things if they saw somebody in distress. And I checked the runtime on this movie. It's not the longest film. It only runs for about 73 minutes. They really get into the point of the movie very early on as soon as it starts. I feel like this movie came at a decent time, because if it came maybe 2 months before October, I probably would have been like, don't even waste your time, don't waste your money. But seeing as how we are into the spooky season and there aren't really that much competitors as far as like scary Halloween movies are concerned, I feel like it would be a good watch if you wanted to watch something, you know, just for the festivities of Halloween. Is this movie a bad movie? No, not at all. I don't feel like it's the best movie either, but it is October and there aren't much competitors out here as far as scary movies or Halloween movies are concerned. So I feel like if you want to give it a watch, why not? Go ahead. It has a few jump scares. I mean, you might actually like it more than I think you will. I don't think they could have picked a better dog for this movie. Indy is an adorable retriever, and I think that they made the right call for picking this type of dog for this type of movie. And you could tell this movie didn't have the highest budget, but I don't think that worked against the movie. I think it actually made it even better, because honestly, you could see a lot of how the shots were done to give you kind of like a real life, kind of eerie, unsettling tone, and I think it worked out for the movie. You know, Todd is sick. He goes to his grandfather's house. He gets more sick. You know, he sleepwalks at night, and there's things that's causing him to hurt himself, and Indy has a genuine concern for his owner, and it's just a heartfelt story about this dog really trying to protect his owner and really trying to save his life. I feel like this is a good movie to watch, especially since we're in the Halloween season, and I feel like eventually this movie could even become a Halloween classic. It's one of those movies that I feel like is different, and it tells a different tale. You never really seen an animal take the lead role in a horror film before, and I just felt like it was different and unique in its own way. But if you see Good Boy, let me know what you think. Let me know if you like it, and if you didn't like it, please leave a comment, like this video, and subscribe, as it'll help build the channel. And remember everyone, it ain't cinema unless it's absolute cinema. Till next time, take care.